Chapter 2, 1968, the year of coronavirus and the 9/11 master plan. 1968 was a very significant year, full of tragedy and plotting. In terms of tragedy, one of many included a gunshot that ended Martin Luther King Jr.'s life on April 4th, 4/4, the well-remembered civil rights leader. For your gematria learning, his demise was on a date corresponding with the word kill, summing to 44 using simple English, and shooting summing to 44 with Pythagorean, same as execution. Making matters all the more suspicious, his murder came 1 year to the day of his speech, Beyond Vietnam, A Time to Break Silence, given April 4, 1967, at the Riverside Church in New York, where he said the heart of all that was wrong with the United States, including racism, was the U.S. military agenda that was responsible for bringing so much hatred, death, destruction, and darkness into the world. Perhaps it isn't a coincidence, then, that military sums to 44, with Pythagorean gematria, or that our history books state the assassination of Caesar took place in 44 BC, a man who led one of the greatest militaries of all time. After all, they do say that the victors write the history books, and all roads lead to Rome. As for the Jesuit influence in English language and its once secret gematria code, do not look past the fact that the word infantry has Pythagorean gematria of 44, or that soldier equates to 44 with reverse Pythagorean. In the case of the first word infantry, it has infant in it, showing that the cabal knows what they're doing, taking advantage of the youth, and exploiting them for the purpose of their militaristic agendas. And with regards to soldier, it has the words sol and die in it. Of course, sol is the Spanish word for sun, and it is the beginning of the word solar, relating to the sun's energy. At the same time, the last letter in the word is R, the 18th letter, corresponding with the gematria of IHS, as well as sun, as well as the age most young people join the military at. Furthermore, the Jesuit logo is the sun with the acronym IHS in the middle of it, and you must keep in mind the text Art of War by Sun Tzu, emphasis on sun, was translated in 1772 by a Jesuit in France. And further, some historians contend there was never a Sun Tzu, a man who is believed to have died at either age 46 or 47, where Catholic and Vatican equate to 46 and 47, respectively. And of course, France also sums to 47, reminding us of L'Enfant, who laid out Washington, D.C., the 47th city, and the heart of the cabal's military empire. And if at this point you're thinking about the number 44 and MLK, and you're wondering about Barack Obama, a name summing to 68 with simple English, think 1968, who became president at age 47, and who became the 44th president elected 44 years after the Civil Rights Act, and who ran his campaign on hope, summing to 44 with simple English. Then you're wondering about the right things, and yes, your questions will be answered. After MLK, another well-remembered gunshot came, ending Robert Kennedy's life, June 6th, 6/6, the man who brought the news of MLK's murder to the minds of many with his televised words. Also, not by coincidence, Robert Kennedy sums to 66, the same as his assassin, Sirhan Sirhan, both with the Pythagorean cipher, complementing the date of death, 6/6. Patterns such as these bring new meaning to the age-old expression, your number is up. We'll touch more on both assassinations ahead, and we'll even discuss JFK's and Lincoln's, because they all come together through one number that points with great intensity at the Jesuit order. And for those that hate cliffhangers, I'll give you half of the story now. Martin Luther King Jr. was not born with the name. He was born Michael King Jr. The name he assumed, Martin Luther, was the name of the leader of the Protestant Reformation against the Catholic Church. That transpired after he published the 95 Thesis exposing the Church's wrongdoings. Through his efforts, the Jesuit order was created, with the purpose of killing Martin Luther and his followers. Not by chance, the Jesuits were recognized by Rome on September 27th, the day leaving 95 days left in the year, to counter the 95 Thesis and Martin Luther's campaign. And that brings us to the fact that Martin Luther King Jr. was killed on the 95th day of 1968, a leap year, and also on a date with 95 numerology. 4 plus 4 plus 19 plus 68 equals 95. That's the half of it. For your learning, you should also know that Jesus, Savior of Men, a Jesuit motto, equates to 95 with reverse Pythagorean, and of course MLK was a follower of Jesus Christ. Moving on, the infamous year included the 1968 pandemic known as the Hong Kong flu that reportedly killed at least 1 million and as many as 4 million people. 1968 was the year the term coronavirus was coined. 1968 was the year of what is believed to be the first documented HIV case, coming from City Hospital, summing to 68 in reverse Pythagorean. 1968 was the year 911 was established as the emergency dialing code in the U.S., with the first call made on February 16, 1968, the 47th day of the year. 1968 was the year World Trade Center construction began in New York in the 74th meridian west. 1968 was also the year George W. Bush, the president at the time of 9/11, graduated from Yale and Skull and Bones, a man with a July 6, 1946 birthday, meaning September 11th is the 68th day of his age every year. Seriously, what are the odds of that? Answer: about 1 in 365. Let us not forget his father's speech. The 41st President, George H.W. Bush, on September 11, 1990, 11 years to the day, about a new world order, and it being freer of terror. Of course, the word terror sums to 68 with reverse simple English. As we know, that was W's favorite word. And more than a decade later, I'm still trying to figure out how to correctly write the way he would pronounce it. Terror, terror, terror. No matter how, W's father, H.W., was a member of Skull and Bones, the same as his father, Prescott, and the same as W himself, and fittingly, Skull and Bones sums to 41 with Pythagorean gematria, tying in with H.W. being the 41st president, and September 11, 2001 taking place on a date with 41 numerology. 9 plus 11 plus 20 plus 1 equals 41. Even further, the attack was blamed on Al-Qaeda, summing to 41 with simple English, similar to how Saudi Arabia equates to 41 with Pythagorean, where the majority of hijackers were said to be from. Keep in mind, 41 is the 13th prime number, and Skull and Bones is the U.S. offshoot of the Bavarian Illuminati that was established with 13 families on May 1, 1776. Skull and Bones is also a fraternity located at building number 322 on the Yale campus, a number they identify by. Just ask Tim Russert, who prior to his untimely death at age 58, asked both George W. Bush and John Kerry about being in Skull and Bones and the significance of 322. While they were the two respective candidates for U.S. presidents in the 2004 race, Bush representing the Republicans and Kerry representing the Democrats. Adding to the relevance of the number, as we covered earlier, the founder of the Bavarian Illuminati, Adam Weishaupt, died November 18, 1830, the 322nd day of the year, leaving 43 days remaining. As for the son, George W. Bush, being the 43rd president, he and his father attended Yale, as stated. This matters because Yale sums to 43 with simple English, and you might recall how George W. Bush was announced the 43rd president-elect after Florida called the election in his favor. This was funny at the time because his brother Jeb was the current and 43rd governor of Florida, and not by chance. Florida sums to 43 with reverse Pythagorean gematria, same as Masonic. On the Masonic tip, the letters D, C are 4, 3. And don't forget that before H.W. was the 41st president, he was the 43rd vice president. And prior to that, he was the 11th director of the CIA, an alphabet agency with an acronym summing to 68, in reverse simple English. 1968 was the beginning of a new age, and not a positive one for humanity, but one that we're feeling the consequences of today. It is probably no accident, then, the word age sums to 68 with reverse simple English, or that solar system equates to 68 with reverse Pythagorean, seeing as how it is the movement of the planets in relation to the sun and stars that dictates the age. As I write this, HBO has announced they're removing Gone with the Wind, summing to 68 in reverse Pythagorean, from their movie platform, a classic title that opened the 1968 Cannes Film Festival that was ended prematurely by civil unrest and rioting. The reason for its 2020 removal, in the words of HBO, is that it needs to be culturally reframed in the wake of George Floyd's death and the rioting caused by the video of his death being shown in mainstream media thereafter. Thus, if the times are changing, so is the age, but we must understand these things are being forced and not coming about naturally or to anyone's benefit except the cabal's. For one more spark of the mind on rigged selections of George W. Bush, and for the purpose of exposing how rigged the game is, when Florida was called in his favor, he received the winning 271st Electoral College vote, the 58th prime number, connecting to the Pythagorean gematria of George W. Bush, summing to 58. And yes, that is the same cipher that Freemasonry, Rosicrucian, Secret Society, and Solomon's Temple equate to. 58 in. At the same time, Bush sums to 58 with reverse simple English, reminding that Tim Russert, who asked Bush and Kerry about Skull and Bones, didn't make it past the age of 58, dying on his 38th day of his age, where the words death, murder, killing, and RIP each have gematria of 38. Tim Russert, May 7, 1950 to June 13, 2008, the day leaving 201 days left in the year. Next time you see the movie poster for Murder by Numbers, you'll be sure to notice two letters are changed to numbers, the E to a 3 and the B to an 8, thus 3 and 8 like 38. And on the subject of 58, never forget King James, who has the KJV Bible named after him, died at age 58, unexpectedly. He was a Rosicrucian and a Freemason. And for another reminder, biblical sums to 58 with reverse Pythagorean. Star. We'll touch more on King James and the biblical riddle when we get to Kobe Bryant's suspicious death, January 26, 2020, a day after being passed by LeBron James in all-time points scored, aka King James, in Kobe's hometown, Philadelphia. Never mind the Church of Philadelphia is referenced in Revelation 3:7, thus a city name having biblical roots, or that a cartoon named Chamberlain Heights foreshadowed Kobe's death in a helicopter crash. In a November 16 episode written 16/11, like 1611, the year the King James Version Bible was published. And while we're at it, never mind that Los Angeles Lakers and Kobe Bryant each equate to 58. Back on the subject of 1968, it was the year the Quran code was reported to be discovered, showing how the Holy Book is encoded with the number 19 from cover to cover through simple calculations, such as how the 114 chapters of the text, or 114 surahs, are divisible by 19. Star. 19 times 6 equals 114. 1968 was also the year Mohammed Atta was born, said to be the ringleader of the 19 hijackers on 9/11, and the oldest of the group, having turned 33 on September 1, 2001, a standout age for self-sacrifice. It almost makes you say Jesus Christ. For the record, it was reported that his hijacked craft, Flight 11, flew into the 110-story World Trade Center towers that appeared as a massive number 11 in the skyline of the 11th state, New York, on the 11th day of the month. In light of the Jesus Christ point, consider September 11, 2001 is New Year's Day on the Christian Coptic calendar, and it is a date some researchers contend is the true birthday of Jesus, coming just 3 days after September 8th, the date the Catholic Church celebrates as the Virgin Mary's birthday. Furthermore, the name Jesus sums to 11 with Pythagorean gematria. When you're aware of this, you can understand why Revelation sums to 121 with simple English, a number having a square root of 11 and being the concluding book of the Holy Bible, dealing with the return of Jesus and the suffering the world must endure before that time. Keep in mind, when you add 1 through 11 together, it sums to 66, and Revelation is the 66th book of the Bible, and the final book of the New Testament summing to 66 with reverse Pythagorean. For another, math sums to 66 with reverse simple English, and of course, the New Testament begins with the book of Matthew. Coming back to the man born in 1968, Atta, who died at 33, on what some would agree is Jesus' birthday, it is noteworthy the word crucifixion sums to 68 using Pythagorean gematria. Another relevant word equating to 68 in light of the story of Jesus beginning in the book of Matthew is the word mathematics itself, using the reverse Pythagorean cipher. Related to the value of mathematics summing to 68, the subject sacred geometry equates to 68 with Pythagorean gematria. If you have read my first book, Letters and Numbers, you are well aware of the relationships between the gematria of the English language and the sacred numbers of sacred geometry, and how those numbers connect to spiritual traditions, including Christianity and Jesus. For example, the most important shape in sacred geometry is the flower of life. That is made up of 61 overlapping circles, and those circles represent all of creation. Using reverse simple English, Jesus sums to 61, not unlike how church sums to 61 with simple English, or Christian sums to 61 with reverse Pythagorean, same as Christmas. To take it a bit further, there are 13 circles in what is known as the fruit of life, in sacred geometry, that rest in middle of the flower of life, not unlike Jesus and his 12 disciples, or the sun and its 12 constellations, thus 13 and 13. Adding to the riddle with Jesus, who spoke in riddles, the word fruit sums to 74 with simple English and 61 with reverse simple English, the exact same as Jesus and cross. Returning to Muhammad Atta, what was reportedly leading him to his great sacrifice on the 74th meridian west at the age of 33, where the master orders from Osama bin Laden, or cave dweller, as the president called him. Not by chance, Osama bin Laden, cave dweller, and president each equate to 110 with simple English gematria, same as Adolf Hitler, the biggest historical villain next to Osama, who was born April 20, 1889, the 110th day of the year. This set of 110 pairs perfectly with the 110-story tall Twin Towers that were proposed by the Rockefeller family, a surname summing to 110 with simple English as well. In the 10th chapter of this book, we'll discuss the Rockefeller Foundation's 2010 document scenarios for the future of technology and international development. In the document, it brainstorms the future potential control structures of the world, and there is one referred to as lockstep style government, where there is a massive surveillance grid for the populace, authoritarian rule, and much pushback from the people. I bring this up because in the time of coronavirus and the writing of this book, massive surveillance grids are being installed by governments worldwide under the guise of tracking carriers of the virus, and we do live in a very authoritarian, top-down structure style of government, whether we realize it or not. And at the moment I am finishing this book, there is massive pushback worldwide as protests are held across the globe in remembrance of George Floyd, who was seen being murdered by a police officer on mass mind control sets across the world, the TV. In George Floyd's memory, the name Martin Luther King Jr. is being evoked, who was of course assassinated in 1968 at the age of 39, not unlike how George or Gemini both summed to 39 in Pythagorean gematria. And George was killed in the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, in the time of Gemini, the twins, on the 93rd meridian west. The 93 matters because Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Martin Luther King Jr. sum to 93 in Pythagorean, similar to how Malcolm X sums to 93 with simple English, and the two civil rights leaders only met once in history, March 26, 1964, a date with 93 numerology. Like King, Malcolm X was also killed at age 39 on a date with 44 numerology. February 21, 1965, by an assassin. Thomas Hagen, whose name sums to 44 with Pythagorean, and who received 44 years in prison, to match MLK's 4/4 expiration, connecting with James Earl Ray, the accused killer of MLK, who died April 23, 1998, 44 days after his 70th birthday on March 10th. For the record, Malcolm X's assassin was a member of the Nation of Islam, summing to 58 in Pythagorean, same as Audubon Ballroom, where Malcolm X was shot dead. And to connect it back to George Floyd, he was killed by a 44-year-old officer, a title summing to 44 in Pythagorean, same as Overseer in the 44th parallel north, in Minneapolis, by a man named Derek Chauvin, summing to 58 with Pythagorean as well. Not by chance, the name Chauvin alone sums to 33 in Pythagorean, the same as police, and the same as race war. At the same time, federal also sums to 33 with Pythagorean, and this is why Donald Trump first deployed federal police to Oregon, the 33rd state, who were reported to be snatching George Floyd protesters off the street with military tactics and unmarked vans. Keep in mind, the headlines about federal police in Oregon first emerged on July 18, or 18/7, like 187, corresponding with the gematria of the nation's federal government headquarters, Washington, D.C., equating to 187 with reverse simple English, the same as Society of Jesus. At the same time, Portland equates to 44 with reverse Pythagorean, the same as Chicago, and this is why Trump announced he was dispersing federal police to Chicago after having success in Portland. You can say he was executing the federal police state by the numbers, a term equating to 44 with Pythagorean gematria. And in case you're not familiar with what a police state is, I'll use Google's definition only because they're one of the key companies in helping execute it, as we'll get to. Their definition is as follows: police state, a totalitarian state controlled by a political police force that secretly supervises the citizens' activity. I suppose the only difference being that in 2020 it is no longer a secret, and as we move ahead through this chapter and this book, you'll understand more and more. This is exactly what is being built, a police state in the United States of America and across the world, something that has been in the works for several decades. Furthermore, it is being implemented based on a series of lies that in recent history includes 9/11 and the coronavirus outbreak of 2020. Speaking of the number 44, later in the chapter I'll teach you about the greater significance of the World Trade Centers falling to the ground 44 days after Tisha B'Av, also known as the 9th of Av, summing to 44 with reverse Pythagorean. It is the Jewish day to remember the destruction of the two temples, similar to the two towers or twin towers that were bombed in 93 and had their bombing blamed on the blind sheep, a name summing to 93 with simple English. And on the subject of 93, it is a number you must understand the meaning of. It represents time in two ways. One, we are told through science that the sun is 93 million miles away, and the sun is the timekeeper of our Gregorian calendar. This becomes all the more interesting when you realize God's Son, Nazareth, and crucifix each sum to 93 with simple English. Never mind that we measure time with the thought of BC, or before Christ, and after. And never mind that in 2012, science claimed they had traced the date of Jesus' crucifixion to April 3rd, what is the 93rd day of the Gregorian year, tying in with the crucifixion lasting from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. in the Bible. The second time association with the number 93 is the planet Saturn, having simple English gematria of 93. Saturn is the most distant planet from the Sun to the naked eye, known as the keeper of time to the occult. It is for these reasons Flight 93 was part of the September 11th ritual, and the second plane to hit the Twin Towers was reported to have crashed into the structure at 9:03 a.m. For another related thought, the words atomic bomb summed to 93 using simple English, and the research for its creation was called the Manhattan Project. Of course, the World Trade Centers were in Manhattan, and when they collapsed, the site was called Ground Zero, a name that was only used to describe the point above or below ground where an atomic or nuclear bomb had detonated prior to September 11, 2001. With that in mind, ask yourself what energy was used to turn those buildings to dust as they fell to the ground, falling into nice little neat piles covering New York in fine layers of towers' remains. Could it have been a weapon developed by a Manhattan Project? Could it have been an atomic bomb? And why did the U.S. military detonate over 1,000 atomic and nuclear bombs, many of them below ground, for the better part of the century anyway? Not by chance. Underground testing concluded September 23, 1992, shortly before the 93 WTC bombing on February 26, that presented the authorities with an opportune time to work under the buildings that were attacked below. Could this have been when the charges were set? No matter the answer, in the decades since the collapse of the World Trade Centers, there have been many health-related deaths for the people of New York, and many questions unanswered. In my opinion, it is fair to ask if fallout from the possible blast is the culprit. And for one last point about 93, at least for now, the last surviving pilot to drop the atomic bomb on Japan, a nation summing to 93, with reverse simple English, died at age 93. He was Theodore Van Kirk. Adding to the 110 list, and coming back to George Floyd, his death occurred in Minnesota, a state summing to 110 with simple English. And once again, it was reported that a police officer knelt on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, similar to how Mohammed Atta reportedly crashed into the World Trade Center at 8:46 a.m. local. For another Dave Chappelle, the comedian with a name equating to 110 in simple English, made a bit in tribute to George Floyd, titled 846. To take it further, the name George Floyd sums to 119 with simple English gematria, not unlike the way the majority of the world writes the date September 11th, or 11/9. And adding further to the riddle, the last time there was as big of a social push with marches and protesting prior to those in remembrance of George Floyd were the marches inspired by the Stoneman Douglas High School shooting in Florida, a school named after a woman from Minneapolis, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, where the school shooting happened Valentine's Day, February 14, 2018, a span of 119 weeks from the George Floyd killing video being released, May 26, 2020. The 119 pattern also reminds of Rodney King riots that the George Floyd riots have been compared to. Those began April 29, 1992, after the police officers involved in his assault were acquitted on TV. Of course, April 29 is the 119th day of the Gregorian year, and Fraternal Order of Police sums to 119 with Pythagorean gematria. If you're not familiar with the FOP's logo, it has an all-seeing eye on it, summing to 119 with simple English. And for a couple more 119s, Osama bin Laden was reported dead May 2, 2011, a span of 119 weeks after Barack Obama became President Obama, January 20, 2009. Obama, better yet, Osama bin Laden's father reportedly died in a plane crash, September 3, 1967, the day leaving 119 days in the year, and a date that can be expressed as 9/3. For the record, 1967 was the year of the Six-Day War, won by Israel, and summing to 119 with reverse simple English, pairing with how the symbol on Israel's flag, the Star of David, sums to 119 in simple English, just like Orthodox. For another, New Jersey sums to 119 with reverse simple English, where the dancing Israelis were arrested on 9/11 at the Doric apartment complex, summing to 322. The number of Skull and Bones with reverse simple as well. If you haven't heard President Eisenhower's farewell address, where he warns the U.S. people of the coming military-industrial complex, summing to 322 in simple English, you should seek out that speech. He was warning us that something like 9/11 was coming if we didn't stop the growing thirst for conflict that our nation's military strategy was based on. But who could have been behind all this? Look no further than the Vatican, summing to 119 with reverse simple English, the heart of the same church that has been waging wars, especially with Islamic regions of the world, for centuries. And for those who doubt this, make sure you finish the book because you won't doubt it later. To connect the dots even further between culture-shaping events we've already drawn parallels between, let us examine the number 33. In the case of Rodney King, he was beaten on March 3rd, or 3/3, by the LAPD, summing to 33 with simple English. This is similar to how police sums to 33 with Pythagorean, and how Trayvon Martin was buried on March 3rd, and how the rioting began after Floyd's killing on East 33rd Street in Minneapolis, and that the killing officer Chauvin has a surname summing to 33 with Pythagorean, and that the Cops TV show was dropped in Paramount after its 33rd season because of the George Floyd protests, while Detroit was erecting a statue of RoboCop in 2020, 33 years after the 1987 film, during a time of national discussion about defunding human police. The number 33 is a hallmark of the Cabal, and it has everything to do with why the World Trade Center lasted for 33 years, 1968 to 2001, and why Jesus was crucified at the youthful age of 33. As we're beginning to understand, these tragic and impactful events of modern and biblical times are being contrived in accordance with Scripture to fulfill biblical prophecy. Not by chance, the word Bible sums to 33 with reverse Pythagorean, as does Sunday, the only day of the week that has a connection to the number, and the day that was made the one to worship on by force by the Catholic Church, reminding that the Jesuit logo is the sun, connecting to the naming of the day, Sunday. And for the record, Sunday and Jesuit are the exact same in 3 out of 4 base ciphers, summing to 21, 78, and 84. And in light of Scripture and number games, think about how Genesis 11:9 is where the story of God destroying the Tower of Babel ends, in light of the demise of the Twin Towers on 11/9. And as for the word prophecy, it sums to 110 with reverse simple English gematria, bringing clarity to why it is used in the way it has, from 9/11 with the 110 story towers to George Floyd's killing in Minnesota. To connect a gematria-based relationship with 33 and 119, consider that pineal sums to 33 with reverse Pythagorean gematria, as in the pineal gland or the mind's eye, and the Masonic phrase all-seeing eye, that relates to the pineal gland sums to 119 with simple English, through the TV, or better referred to as the television. The Cabal has a window into the mind's eye of the masses, and through the TV as well as other popular media, they are actively programming the populace with regularly scheduled programming, as they so often call it. This programming's purpose is to steer the behavior of people in the direction of their ongoing agendas. Agendas that boil down to giving the Cabal greater and greater control over humanity, while disarming the people of their God-given liberties, under the guise of safety and protection. Their objectives are arrived at through the repetitive strategies of order out of chaos, while broadcasting fear before delivering a predetermined solution. The other important point is that they achieve these objectives with greater and greater spiritual wickedness as time passes on. To take it further, there is an occult belief about spiritual ascension up the 33 bones of the human vertebrae that leads to enlightening the mind's eye, or the pineal gland of a person. It is in this belief where the occult significance of 33 resides, and the likely reason for both people and person equating to 33 with Pythagorean gematria. The name of the belief is Kundalini, summing to 58 with reverse Pythagorean, complementing the 58 values of Freemasonry and secret society, as we covered up prior. For another 58, the four-letter name of God, Tetragrammaton, sums to 58 with Pythagorean, and Kundalini is about connecting with God. It is because of Kundalini that Freemasonry is fixated on the number 33. And despite Freemasonry being about self-improvement, including spiritual, and that being the true purpose of the knowledge they study, including the Bible, Kabbalah, Kundalini, Hermeticism, and alchemy, the Cabal has taken the knowledge and turned it on its head, pushing darkness to prevent the people of this earth from reaching enlightenment. They do this because the people in the dark without light are much more easily contained, controlled, and exploited. And by the way, they sums to 58 with simple English. Now you'll know what to say the next time someone asks the common question, who are they? What is being done to humanity at this point, at this moment in history, is the knowledge of our ancestors is being inverted. And instead of helping people spiritually ascend, the Cabal is using their mass media mind control weapons to pump non-stop fear, division, and chaos encoded with occult wisdom to keep us in a low vibrational state, so that we are less likely to think and more likely to follow out of fear with a coward mentality. Thus, those of us who have the light and who aren't afraid are those who will help free our brothers and sisters from darkness. And that is why it is important we never quit in our quest, and we know our self-worth no matter how difficult the path of truth becomes. That includes not only helping our friends and families, but also strangers who will listen. In doing so, we can help them escape the matrix of misinformation that steals their time, does damage to their energy levels, and programs them with the wrong thoughts and behaviors. Helping them escape the matrix includes avoiding false history, politics, bogus religious teachings, news, mass mind control entertainment, and even pro sports that are rigged to the core and synced with the agendas. Case in point, 1968 was the year the New York Jets went on to have their only Super Bowl winning season, starring Broadway Joe, who guaranteed it. New York? Jets? 9/11? Never mind that Joe Namath sums to 33 with Pythagorean, similar to New York equating to 33 with reverse Pythagorean, and his team's feat would begin a 33-year countdown to the demise of the buildings that were engineered and advertised to withstand impact from a commercial jetliner because of how tall they were, towering over the rest of Gotham City, as it is known in Batman, where the 33rd episode of the old hit TV show, titled Fine Finny Fiends, Skull and Bones, is referenced as being part of the Bruce Wayne family legacy. And for your gematria learning, the alumni of Skull and Bones are referred to as Bonesmen, summing to 33 with Pythagorean gematria. 1968 was also the year Boeing in Seattle, Washington debuted their jumbo jetliner. The city of Seattle is noteworthy because the construction firm that built the World Trade Centers, Magnuson Clementic Associates, is headquartered in Seattle, Washington as well. And the name Seattle, Washington sums to 68 with Pythagorean gematria. For another dot you might otherwise not connect, the Seattle Seahawks won their only Super Bowl, 48, that was hosted by New York and New Jersey at Jet Stadium. When the MVP of the game took the podium to speak after its conclusion, a man grabbed his mic and said, 9/11 was an inside job. Keep in mind the common terminology for an inside job is false flag, summing to 48, same as Seahawks, both using reverse Pythagorean. Furthermore, the MVP of Super Bowl 48 was Malcolm Smith, summing to 48 with Pythagorean gematria. Think about it. What are the odds? To get even more astronomical, the Seattle Seahawks, summing to 43 with Pythagorean, won the game with 43 points. It's a fitting score because football sums to 43 with reverse Pythagorean, and the sport is credited to Walter Camp, a Skull and Bones member who attended Yale, summing to 43, as covered. This should clear things up the next time you see the Batman film, The Dark Knight Rises, where a football stadium explodes only after Section 322 is shown. For another kick, the only player on the field who survives the fictional blast in the film is number 86, reminding of August 6, the date of Hiroshima, a date that can be expressed as 8/6 or 6/8. Adding to the number riddle, Hines Ward, the retired NFL receiver who played the part of number 86 in the film, finished his NFL career with 86 touchdowns, 85 receiving, 1 rushing. And of course wore 86 for his NFL team, the Steelers, that played at Heinz Field. When you have eyes to see, you realize pro sports are nothing but number games, and absolutely weaved in as part of the matrix of riddles the cabal has wrapped around the populace. This knowledge will also bring new meaning to that often repeated line by sports commentators: "You couldn't have scripted it any better." It truly is a slap in the face, especially when you see what's going on. If you're not familiar with what a false flag is, then it is when someone uses pirate tactics, flying a flag that is not their own, but of an enemy, and doing something terrible so that the terrible act will be blamed on the enemy whose flag was used. This was done when the U.S. bombed Pearl Harbor with its own military, but with planes that had the flag of Japan painted on their sides, giving the cabal leverage to get the people of the United States behind the idea of joining World War II against Germany and Japan. That historical false flag is not much different than how, on 9/11, the new Pearl Harbor, as it has been called, the U.S. and its allies, Israel and Saudi Arabia, attacked the World Trade Centers, the Pentagon, and the minds of the people of the world, so that the atrocities could be blamed on a region of the world that was ripe for invading. Of course, this region is ripe with resources, including oil, the opium that is now flooding the streets of the U.S. in the form of heroin, and the mountains of Afghanistan that are full of resources needed to make the computers and phones we use today. On the subject of false flag, it should be noted that it sums to 33 with Pythagorean gematria, the same as Hawaii. Again, the World Trade Centers were attacked after existing for 33 years, and the attack on them was a catalyst for war, the same as the attack on Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. Furthermore, both Pearl Harbor and Order Out of Chaos equate in gematria terms, and Pearl Harbor also equates with World War. Even further, both World War and Pearl Harbor equate with Art of War, the Jesuit translated text on military tactics. And as I will continuously remind you of in the pages ahead, the U.S. Civil War began April 12, 1861, the 102nd day of the year. 9/11 attacks were said to have lasted 102 minutes, and both World War and Art of War equate to 102. To further illustrate how entertainment ties in with the world of recorded history, there is a Hollywood film titled Glass that was released at the beginning of 2019. It is about a terrorist who wants to demolish brand new skyscrapers reminiscent of the World Trade Centers. In the film, they are having their grand opening on December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day. The name of the fictional buildings are the Osaka Tower, referencing the Japanese city of Osaka. These details in the fictional movie are how the cabal get their laughs, taking advantage of a public that is still largely sound asleep, and not able to connect the obvious dots of history. What isn't as obvious about the riddle is the title Glass, summing to 58 with Simple English and 77 with Reverse Simple English. The number 77 was extremely important in the September 11, 2001 ritual, where Flight 77 hit the 77-foot-tall Pentagon on the 77th meridian west, exactly 77 minutes after taking off, where according to the 9/11 Commission report, the plane took off at 8:20 a.m. and crashed at 9:37 a.m. Adding to the number 77 list, September 11th and World Trade Center both sum to 77 using Pythagorean gematria, as does the phrase order from chaos, a tactic of the Jesuits, as well as Masons, that is also sometimes worded ordered out of chaos. At the same time, United States and secret society sum to 77 using reverse Pythagorean, in light of the name of the country, keep in mind the 77th meridian west that cuts through the nation's capital is nicknamed the American Meridian. Furthermore, construction on the Pentagon began September 11, 1941, with emphasis on the year 41, since USA sums to 41 in simple English, and the 9/11 attack occurred on a 41-date numerology, reminding us that Pearl Harbor was attacked December 7, 1941. Tying the events together even more closely, the Hollywood film Pearl Harbor, released May 25, 2001, a span of 110 days from the 110-story World Trade Center's demise on September 11th. This is similar to how the George Floyd murder pre-trial begins September 11th, a span of 110 days from his May 25, 2020 killing in Minnesota, equating to 110. For a bit more on entertainment and pro sports being used as part of the cabal's web of deceit, mockery, and misinformation, think about the New York Jet Mo Lewis wrecking the quarterback Drew Bledsoe of the New England Patriots, who wore number 11 right after the September 11, 2001 attacks. This occurred September 23, 2001, 12 days after the attack, giving rise to Tom Brady, who still wears the number 12 all these years later, and the New England Patriots in the time of the Patriot Act. Do I dare mention Tom Brady was born in 77? To appreciate the script, you must recognize that the Patriot Act became effective October 26, 2001, 45 days after the attack. This matters because Patriot sums to 45 with reverse Pythagorean, and New England sums to 45 in the same cipher, and also with regular Pythagorean gematria. Furthermore, the day Tom Brady took over the team, September 23rd, was the day leaving 99 days left in the year, and both New England and Patriot equate to 99 with simple English. Also, the date the Patriot Act was enacted, October 26th, leaves 66 days left in the year, and Patriot Act sums to 66 with reverse Pythagorean. Let us not forget 66 is the 11th triangular number, and football is a game of 11 on 11. And September 11, 2001 was perhaps the greatest 11 ritual of all time. And on the subject of 66, ahead I will teach you about Jewish gematria, where the acronym NFL sums to 66, and 1966 was the start of the NFL's first Super Bowl season. In terms of how news and sports are scripted together, it is for this reason that Tom Brady left the New England Patriots in 2020, at the time of coronavirus, while the nation and its patriots were falling. The ritual is undeniable when you know gematria. For example, he made clear he was going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on March 16th, a date written 3/16, like 316, and Tampa Bay Buccaneers equates to 316 with reverse simple. Furthermore, it was the next day, March 17th, that he officially signed with his new team. That was on a date that can be written 17/3, like 173. And this date matters because Knights Templar sums to 173 with simple English. Again, they were the order of the knights that served the Catholic Church and its Pope until they were banned by the Church Friday, October 13, 1307. At that point, many of them fled and went into hiding, becoming pirates or buccaneers. Furthermore, Tom Brady moving on to play football in Florida at the age of 43 is no accident, because both words equate to 43. Keep in mind, the pirate symbolism in his new team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, also reminds us of the pirate symbolism in the Oakland Raiders, the team that was screwed with the tuck rule. January 19, 2002. Emphasis on 1/19. To launch the New England Patriots' very, very scripted dynasty that lasted nearly 2 full decades. And if you look carefully, you'll notice the skull and crossed swords symbolism of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers logo is eerily similar to the skull and bones symbolism of the powerful Yale fraternity that had Bush in office, thanks to Florida. when 9/11 happened, as well as the emergence of Tom Brady, the New England Patriots, and the Patriot Act, STAR. With these topics in mind, I'd encourage you to look into maritime law, the law of the sea, and how it is what U.S. law is based in. These things are not an accident. Instead, they are evidence of who created this land we call the United States of America. And as we are learning, they are entities connected to the Catholic Church. Since we brought up Tom Brady's departure from the New England Patriots, we must also bring up Cam Newton of the Carolina Panthers, being signed by the Patriots to replace him, June 28, 2020, during the time of the George Floyd protests. In the wake of his signing, CNN ran a front-page story, The New American Patriots, with an image of Colin Kaepernick, the NFL QB, who grew his hair out like a Black Panther and said he was paying tribute to 1968 Olympic protesters, as well as Beyoncé, who dressed up as a Black Panther for the Super Bowl 50 halftime show, where Cam Newton lost, as well as Lin-Manuel Miranda, the rising star of the Broadway hit Hamilton, a play where black men replace men who were white. Historically speaking, sort of like Newton replacing Brady. Of course, Cam Newton is another star quarterback in the NFL, who for all of his career has played with a Black Panther on his helmet, as a black man playing for the Carolina Panthers, a team the Patriots defeated in Super Bowl 38, and where Panthers equate to 38 with Pythagorean. In light of this information, you must keep in mind the Black Panther Party was founded by Huey P. Newton, having the same surname as Cam Newton. The riddles don't end there, however. The name Huey P. Newton equates to 131 with reverse simple, and Cam Newton was born May 11, 1989, the 131st day of the year. In the same year Huey P. Newton died, on August 22nd, that date happened to be 83 days after Cam Newton was born, a number corresponding with the gematria of football and murder, both equating to 83. Again, 1983 was the year the song Murder by Numbers was released. Beyond that, Newton's NFL career came to an unexpected pause in the previous seasons when he was benched by his head coach for a rookie, a storyline that has led to him signing with the New England Patriots, with 131 career games played under his belt. You should know 131 is the 32nd prime, and both America and NFL equate to 32, the latter being the league with 32 teams, furthering the parallels between Huey and Cam. In Super Bowl 50, the game Cam Newton and the Panthers are lost to the Denver Broncos. Newton became the 58th quarterback, or QB, to start in a Super Bowl, corresponding with the gematria of Huey P. Newton in Pythagorean, as well as Oakland in Simple English, both equating to 58, and the latter being where the Black Panther Party was established by Huey P. Newton in 1966, the first NFL Super Bowl season. I bring this up because Super Bowl 50 was played in the Bay Area, not far from Oakland, Star, and you should also know I called why that would be the Super Bowl matchup and why the Broncos would win and why number 58 Von Miller of the Broncos would be the MVP of the game in October, 4 months before it all happened, causing the USA Today Big Lead to write a feature article about me, while downplaying the relevance of what I was teaching, gematria, and how the NFL and world of professional sports were rigged by the code, and in accordance with news and history, something you can prove every single day with this knowledge. If you would like to read the article, it is titled Conspiracy Theorist Proves Freemasons Rigged AFC and NFC Championship Games by Ryan Phillips, January 27, 2016. You'll notice he pays tribute to the number 47 in the last paragraph, and not by accident. And for a similar read, you can examine the article Wacko YouTuber Proves World Series Was Rigged by Sean Newell of Vice News, also targeting me. If you do read the Vice article, notice he makes fun of my research on the number 52. Then after reading the article, take the time to decode his name, Sean Newell. As you will find out, his name equals 52, making him the perfect person to write what he did. And I'll add, had an article been written about me every time I called a sports championship seasons and months in advance based off this knowledge, there'd be many more articles to reference. And I'll also add, to further the point about Cam Newton and the Black Panther Party, his June 28, 2020 signing by the Patriots came a span of 97 days after he was released by the Panthers on March 24, 2020. And it was a span of 74 days after Bill Belichick's birthday, April 16, 2020. In addition to that, June 28, 2020, the date of the signing, had 74 date numerology, and Black Panther Party sums to 74 with Pythagorean, as well as 97 with reverse Pythagorean. Keep in mind, Bill Belichick also sums to 97 with simple English, and he won the Super Bowl in the 97th NFL season. You might recall that game with the 25-point comeback over the Falcons, equating to 25 with Pythagorean gematria, on the date February 5th, or 2/5, to conclude the 97th NFL season, where 97 is the 25th prime number. And it was at that same season they moved the touchback to 25 yards from 20. Of course, the date of the Super Bowl could also be expressed 5/2, like 52, and Belichick and Brady became 5 and 2 in Super Bowls together by the numbers. Coming back to 1968, one of the most important events of that year was the release of the film 2001: A Space Odyssey. It is about technology, and more specifically, AI, or artificial intelligence, overtaking humanity. This phenomenon has a name, and it is called the singularity. It is when technology reaches a point that changes humanity forever, and there is no going back, in the sense that technology advances past the capability of humanity and begins to control humanity. Consider this as a concept that is much easier to grasp in 2020 than it was in 1968 when the film was made. And speaking of the year 2020, the year of coronavirus, you will notice in gematria terms the word singularity and coronavirus are the exact same in all four ciphers, both summing to 155 in simple English, 56 in Pythagorean, 142 in reverse simple English, and 70 in reverse Pythagorean. And rest assured, by the end of the book, you will have notes full of how all four of these numbers have been used, ritualistically, day after day, to contrive the coronavirus narrative in mainstream headlines. But for now, do not forget that the term coronavirus was coined in 1968, the start of a planned age, by the cabal, an age with a planned outcome to use technology to control humanity, to a much greater extent than it ever had before. Fast forward 52 years later, the number corresponding with prophecy and technology using Pythagorean gematria to 2020, when we should all be seeing clearly, and this reality has never been more apparent. For example, two of the world's largest technology companies, Google and Apple, are cooperating with world governments to systematically track the location of every cell phone on the planet that are using their operating systems, for the explained purpose of seeing if people are obeying what is being called the new normal, the laws being installed worldwide in the time of coronavirus. These laws include curfews, only traveling to certain locations, maintaining social distancing, wearing face coverings, and not posting or sharing information that goes against official narratives. Keeping in mind, this level of surveillance is piggybacking off of the Patriot Act, installed after 9/11, that gave the U.S. government the right to track and monitor all of its citizens. Furthermore, the Patriot Act led to the collecting of untold bytes of data that are the phone calls, text messages, emails, library visits, bank records, medical records, etc. of its people. Also keep in mind, this was done in the snap of fingers to those who were told their entire lives they were free and protected from the government infringing on their privacy. And let us not forget, just prior to September 11th, Google was becoming a household name, and most people were getting small computers in their pockets that we call cell phones. It is this device specifically that has been given Big Brother a way to peep into the lives and communications of its people. And it is this same device now, in the wake of coronavirus, that is being used to track our every movement. And it is this same device that is evolving with built-in AI that automates our tasks for us and answers our questions, always listening. And I repeat, always listening. Also, not by chance, the coronavirus pandemic summing to 56 in Pythagorean is taking place at the same time 5G. Doesn't 5G look a bit like 56? Technology is rolling out worldwide that gives Big Brother the systems of surveillance capability to track as many phones with detail as they are. Worse yet, U.S. citizens are being asked to snap photos of people violating mandatory mask orders and to send those images to government agency phone numbers so that facial recognition technology systems can be tested and improved by them. Of course, all of these infringements on our liberties are spoon-fed to us. They are introduced as caring gestures by the authorities. Keep us safe, that we should welcome or else fear being called paranoid or a conspiracy theorist by those around us. God forbid anyone questioning anything is the collective sentiment. And shouldn't we all feel safe now, with the watchful eye of world governments on us? As we'll get to in later chapters, the U.S. surveillance system in the aftermath of coronavirus is known as the TRACE Act and was introduced as H.R. 6666, not far off from 666, the number of the beast from Revelation. If you're not familiar with 666 and Revelation, there is a prophecy that the people of the world will be made to take the mark of the beast on either their forehead or their right hand, and if they do not, then they will not be allowed to buy or sell. In modern times, that could mean not being able to work or go to school or use any form of public transit or shop at most markets. And on the subject of the number 666, it is no accident that Stanley Kubrick, the director of 2001 A Space Odyssey, died 666 days before January 1, 2001, on March 7, 1999. It should also be noted that March 7 is the 66th day of the year, and number of the beast sums to 66 in Pythagorean gematria. And again, 666 is referred to in the Bible, the text that is 66 books in length, as the number of the beast. It's also not an accident that Microsoft, Bill Gates' old company, filed a patent on March 26, 2020, with the number W02020060606, clearly paying tribute to 666. This patent is for a future cryptocurrency that will monitor your rate of body movement, that will in turn calculate your earnings based on effort. Imagine what that will lead to. Sadly, these things should come as no surprise, because the number 666 has been associated with computers since Apple priced their first consumer computer at $666.66 in 1976. This becomes all the more fascinating when you learn Sumerian and reverse Sumerian gematria, because words such as computer and internet equate to 666 using them. With these ciphers, you multiply the simple English cipher and the reverse simple English cipher by 6. The ciphers are as follows. It is Sumerian gematria where computer equates to 666, and it is reverse Sumerian where internet equates to 666. And while we're at it, another word summing to 666 in reverse Sumerian is Genesis, the opening book of the Bible, that tells the story of Adam and Eve and the forbidden fruit that was not to be eaten from. Now think of Apple's logo, the fruit, with a missing bite. And for the most hardcore of coincidence theorists, who might possibly be reading this page at this very moment, are you seriously going to shrug off the 666.66 price as a coincidence? Surely this isn't, nor is HR 6666. For a little more learning, There is one more cipher that you must know, and it is the most important outside of the base ciphers that you learned in Chapter 1. It is known as Jewish Gematria, and it pays tribute to the order of the English letters from when they were part of the Latin alphabet. The cipher also pays tribute to Hebrew Gematria and Greek isopsephy in the way it assigns number values to letters. Before I reveal the cipher, I must inform you that isopsephy sums to 666 with reverse Sumerian, and remind you that Revelation 13:18 about the number of the beast, 666, is a Greek isopsephy riddle. As was mentioned earlier, NFL sums to 66 in this cipher. Another relevant calculation to know based on the contents of this chapter is that Al-Qaeda sums to 102 with Jewish Gematria, and the 9/11 attacks were said to have lasted 102 minutes, again connecting back to Art of War. They even made a film about this fact titled 102 Minutes That Changed America. Better yet, Tisha B'Av sums to 911 with Jewish Gematria, and it is the day to remember the destruction of the two temples, similar to the Twin Towers. To get a little mathematical, 911 is the 156th prime number, and false flag sums to 156 in Jewish Gematria. It only figures then from the date underground nuclear testing concluded, September 23, 1992, to the date of the 93 WTC bombing was 156 days later, reminding that Robert Kennedy, summing to 156 in simple English, was shot on June 5th, the 156th day of the year. And oddly enough, there are only two numbers, 0 through 100, that when written out as words sum to 156 with simple English. They are 33 and 28. Space Odyssey also sums to 156 with simple English, and Kennedy sums to 33 with Pythagorean. This matters because the World Trade Centers existed for 33 years, but they were only open for 28, having their grand opening on April 4, 1973. In light of April 4th, recall where we began, with Martin Luther King Jr. being killed on April 4th in 1968. In a non-leap year, April 4th is the 94th day of the year, connecting to the fact that World Trade Center sums to 94 with reverse Pythagorean, and terror sums to 94 with simple English. Thus, from the grand opening, their fate was sealed. As we mentioned prior, the Twin Towers fell 44 days after Tisha B'Av, a Jewish holiday that concluded July 29, 2001 in that year. The holiday is known as the 9th of Av, summing to 44 with reverse Pythagorean. This brings us to what I said at the beginning of the chapter. There is a number that ties together the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr., Robert Kennedy, JFK, and Abraham Lincoln, and that number is 144. When you write out the word 44 and the date April 4th, they both sum to 144 in simple English, the same as Jesuit order. So MLK was shot on April 4th. Robert Kennedy was reported dead at 1:44 a.m. on June 6th. JFK, the 44th term president, died at the start of Sagittarius, summing to 144 with simple English, same as Kennedy curse, and Abraham Lincoln was shot on April 14th or 14/4 in the year 1865. Even more, MLK's assassin not only died 44 days after his birthday, but he also died on a date with 144 numerology. April 23, 1998. 4 plus 23 plus 19 plus 98 equals 144. As we covered in Chapter 1, this number not only connects to the Jesuit order, but also the United States of America. More importantly, it is a number that represents time. In Jewish Gematria, the word time itself sums to 144, complementing clock, summing to 44 with simple English. Beyond Gematria, consider that each day on Earth there are 1,440 minutes, and the square root of 144 is 12, the number we track the months of our year with, and the number of hours we divide the day with. Like I said at the end of the first chapter, time is everything to these people. and the cabal, led by the Jesuits, lays down their rituals daily like clockwork, using the Bible's scripture, where 144 is a relevant number, especially to Hebrew gematria studies, largely because of how the number 144,000 is referenced in Revelation 7. For a few last points, JFK and RFK were killed at Dealey Plaza and the Ambassador Hotel, respectively, both summing to 54, same as Jesuit order, and reminding us that the thing dictating time, the sun, sums to 54 with simple English. Furthermore, one of Lincoln's assassins, John Surratt, was a Jesuit agent born John Harrison Surratt, equating to 266 with simple English, and 95 with Pythagorean, both numbers that are extremely specific to the Jesuit order, and that will come up time and time again as we progress through the pages of this book. Plus, let us not forget MLK was killed on the 95th day of 1968.